Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I got a couple of reviews for you. First, I picked this up because I saw it a few years ago, really enjoyed it, wanted to check it out again, and I was actually surprised I found it because I've never seen it on DVD before. 2012's Found. It's a 2012 film, but it wasn't released till 2014, and this this is a damn good movie. I mean, I think most people might know the cover that I'm going to use as the thumbnail, but it was directed by uh, Scott Shermer, written by Scott Shermer, based on a novel of the same name by Todd Rigney. And this, it's a coming of age story, and possibly the best horror coming of age story that I can think of. It premiered at a bunch of festivals, won a bunch of awards. Um, the kid actors did a wonderful job. Basically, you have this 12-year-old named Marty, played by Gavin Brown, and he did do a good job, I think. Huge horror movie fan, and it sort of has an appeal, kind of a silly reference, but kind of like Napoleon Dynamite. There's no real time setting in this. I mean, everything sort of looks contemporary, like the cars and everything, but they still use VHS and like go to the video store, which was very nostalgic for me. That a huge part of my childhood was renting horror films from the video store. And so he's a huge horror fan, and he comes to find out his older brother, Steve, played by Ethan, what was it? Ethan Philbeck, is his older brother, Steve. Then Phyllis Monroe is his mother, and Louis Lawless, who was an Oscar-nominated producer, plays their father. Older brother Steve's a serial killer, and it's a secret that kind of eats away at him, but also helps him grow up in a way, sort of a weird way. I really enjoyed this movie. I would almost put this in the extreme section. I mean, I found this to be more disturbing than Murder Set Pieces for sure. I thought this was a way better movie than Murder Set Pieces. Uh, Marty is our narrator, and I mean, as a kid, he loves horror movies. He's making a graphic novel of his own characters with a friend of his. He's picked on at school. He's not very assertive. You know, he's always called names, pushed around. He's tired of it. He's always finding the dirty little secrets of his family, like his dad's porno stash in the garage, his mother's hidden love notes from an ex-boyfriend, and a head in a bowling ball bag in his brother's closet. And his brother's a big horror fan too. Which, when I was watching Family Blood, the son in that reminded me of the brother in this. I thought it was the same actor. And, you know, I don't want to say I relate to the older brother, but, you know, room full of horror movies, Iron Maiden poster, you know, metal posters, you know, always has a metal blasted, just always in his room. That's how I was in high school, except I didn't have a head in a bowling ball bag. I don't bowl. That was a stupid joke. And basically, just as the film goes on, more and more people, Marty starts to lash out a little bit more. Kids keep picking on him. The older brother is trying to tell him, giving him advice like, you always hit back. Who cares if you get in trouble? What they did to you is way worse, because these two kids are spreading rumors that, he's not packing very much, that he's gay, and he tried to kiss them in the bathroom. So that rumor gets out everywhere, so more kids start picking on him. And then the older brother asks who the kid was. We get the idea of what happened to him. Even his best friend, whom he's making a graphic novel with, gets tired of being around him. He's like, kids make fun of me because you're a pussy. I think one thing a lot of people remember from this is the film within a film, Headless. There's another one called Deep Dwellers. And if you get this DVD, you get the full uncut versions of each film within the film. Deep Dwellers is kind of a cheesy monster film. Headless is a twisted, fucked up, like, slasher grindhouse film, which I'll get to Headless in a bit, because there's more to it than that. And there was actually a spin-off film that came out that I cannot find anywhere. But basically, so Marty is this poor... He starts off very innocent. The voiceover talks about how he doesn't even like killing bugs. He gets good grades. He wishes well on people. And as the film goes on, he gets angrier and angrier because no one understands him. Kids pick on him. Parents don't understand him. The only one that cares about him is his older brother, whom he knows is a serial killer. And I thought this movie was very well acted, even by the child actors. Very well shot. I mean, there's this one scene where Marty and his friend... It's like this area where there's old train cars, and the guy that owns it has like haunted house attraction stuff in it. So they go there to hang out. But when the guy yells at them, they run away. And there's this beautiful shot, this high up shot of them. They're like this big on the screen. They're running away. It's just this wide shot of this field, this big hill. It's just them like running away. You don't really see shots like that anymore. It's something you would have seen in an older film. And it all comes to the boiling point where Marty just doesn't give a fuck anymore. He lashes out at this one kid at the church his mom takes him to. Parents are pissed off at him, and Steve gets involved. So the ending is kind of strange. I'll say spoilers, but I want to talk about Headless first. So if you get this DVD, you get the full uncut version of the Headless that they watch, which is like 24 minutes. But there was, I believe it was 2015, Headless did come out. And just quick about that plot, it's about this killer who wears a skull mask. I guess he has like a little prodigy. I guess kind of like a Malevolent from the early 2000s. But it's kind of like Hills Run Red. It's released as this lost 1978 slasher film. And when you watch it on here, the title screen, it says like underneath 1978 copyright. It's gritty and grainy. Just, if you liked how the actual Hills Run Red footage looked in that movie, you'll like how Headless looks in this. And not on the uncut feature, but while Marty and his friend are watching it, it does this cool thing where the camera will zoom in on the TV, and then there will be like superimposed TV static all over it. It'll get really bright, and then it'll go away, and it'll be in high definition. So it's like we crossed through the TV, and now we're in Headless. I thought that was a neat effect. It is basically just this skull mask guy torturing, raping these two women. As messed up as they can make it. I mean, Uh, I'll say spoilers here, but I do recommend this. It is a good coming of age film. You really do feel for Marty, and Gavin Brown, the child actor, did do a great job. His voice acting was also well done. Ethan Philbeck, who plays Steve, I thought he did a good job as well. Especially if you're a kid like me and you grew up watching horror. You grew up watching horror on VHS tapes, renting them from the video store. They do reference horror movies, like when you see the video store or Steve's horror collection, there are VHS tapes of real horror films. They talk to each other about real life films, so that was kind of cool. But it does kind of have a 80s vibe to it, more like a late 70s, like a character study kind of horror film. And Steve's mask is like that old school gas mask. And I'll say spoilers here, but I do recommend this film. Horror Hound Magazine, one of the most disturbing indie horror films I have ever seen. Talking about like actual films, not August Underground or anything like that, like actual indie movies. I could agree, because even if you have movies like a Serbian film, that movie is just for shock. Yeah, there's a story, but it's very thin. I've already talked about a Serbian film. This has a much more grounded, plausible, family next door kind of story, which is more disturbing. I mean, not just looking at rape and murder on a screen as disturbing, looking at the actual, material and story itself. Really enjoyed this film. Definitely recommend it if you can find it. I think I first saw it years ago on Amazon Prime. I don't remember where I saw it, but definitely check this out. But getting into spoilers. After he gets in a fight with the kid at his church, the mom's yelling at him, the dad's pushing him around. Steve gets involved, the dad starts getting all hotshot with him. Steve fights him, gets kicked out, and then that night, Steve beckons him outside and says, "I need you to stay in my room. I gotta do what I gotta do." And he basically ties up Marty with a ball gag. He does come into the room covered in blood with his gas mask. He wants Marty to he's saying he's freeing him. But I think we get the idea that Steve is pretty much snapped at this point. I will say the effects are well done, but the part in Headless when he's just letting the blood run over him, it looks very thick and syrupy. But the effects do look good, and I'll talk more about Headless as well. And they gave him like a huge Serbian film dick to walk around with, I guess. And then the next day, Marty is still tied and gagged in between his mutilated parents. And the voiceover talks about if he'll ever be found. Steve walks around outside naked. End of the film. So it's almost like it's not like he's going down his brother's path, but he's taking some of the defend yourself, stick up for yourself, almost seems like following him to an extent is doing his life better. But he's still at that age, I liked the chemistry. Like when when they do have nice moments, like when he's being a good big brother, they do have really good chemistry. Headless, I mean, when he has the one girl tied up, he cuts her tit off, and it's like he's sucking on the wound. He cuts her eyeballs out and eats it, and just all this white shit runs down him. Decapitates her and fucks the stump. Then there's this other girl that's tied down. He cuts her head off. She's strapped down to a table, and so she's like bleeding all down him, and he's like basking in it. And it looks creepy with that skull mask. And then he cuts her head off and fucks that wound. And then cops come in and shoot him. But I love the look of Headless. How it's that gritty, grainy look. I love the look of the title when it comes on screen with the 1978 copyright stuff at the bottom. So definitely get this version that has those uncut features. And check out the complete spin-off, the full-length spin-off of Headless, which I have to do as well. Yeah, I thought this had a good amount of emotion to it. It was contemporary, but it still had that feeling of, you know, what we liked about the 70s and 80s, especially mixing slasher and coming of age. Also, I like the scene where when his friend is giving him shit. So he goes and gets Steve's bowling ball bag, and it was the first bully's head in it. So he pretty much, you know, he loses his best friend, but he puts him in his place. That's really what starts the downfall of the film. Or not downfall, but, you know, the events of the film. I thought it was well written. Again, very well acted. I like the concept. I know we've seen films like that before. Someone finds out a loved one is a serial killer. But I thought it was very well handled in this. All of the shocking stuff or extreme stuff did not feel like a murder set pieces or a Serbian film where it was trying too hard to scare you. Especially since before they watch Headless, they watch Deep Dwellers, which is a cheesy monster flick. The whole point was, okay, they're watching those, and then they jump right into something like this. So, of course, you know, it feels like it's called for it to be that extreme. I liked this more than a Serbian film. Is it as shocking? Of course not. It doesn't have that level of content in it. But it's a much better film. As far as the extremity level, I would group it with like a murder set pieces. But miles better of a film than murder set pieces. Really liked Found. Really liked the film within the film Headless. Definitely recommend it. I mean, I found this at the store I went to, so you could probably obviously get it online. XL Raider, I guess, is the company that distributed this. But yeah, well shot. You get a lot of really good 70s and 80s style shots. The grain look, the 70s aesthetic of Headless. One of the best films of the last decade that I've seen in a while. I really like the blend of the 80s coming of age and the not just slasher, but also like the 70s grindhouse, really twisted slashers. I could probably say I loved this movie. I thought this was it was even touching in its own way. And in its own twisted way, it was kind of touching. I really liked this film. Thank you for watching.